The LYB podcast is sponsored by Fight Energy. Fight Energy is your all-in-one health drink. You have nootropics, 0 calories, 125 milligrams of caffeine, as well as your daily dose of vitamins to keep you feeling your best. You can order Fight at danityfitness.com. Make sure you use code LYB for 25% off. And we're even going to throw in some travel packs for any purchase. And let us know, are you team strawberry or team blueberry? And when you drink Fight, make sure to tag Danity Fitness 1 on socials to share. Hey everyone, welcome to the LYB podcast. On today we have a special guest, Mr. Big Vinny Hickerson, right? What's up, man? How are you?
Well, if I was any better, I'd be twins.
Oh my gosh. I wish that if you're not watching on YouTube, you need to be watching on YouTube right now because my man showed up in Star Spangled Banner. I mean, just full on overalls.
Truth, justice, and the American way, people.
Yes. And I mean, Superman, I love it.
Yeah, you can't beat Superman.
Yes, especially on this like kind of rainy day. It's like, this is perfect. So
I'd be flying if I could. You know?
And also, you guys, if you obviously if you've been listening and watching everything like that, you saw Jenny come on a couple weeks ago, and that was so special. And that's your wife.
Listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know why she's with me either, but hey, I'm gonna accept it and thank God that it happened that way. So.
I know. Yeah, she was telling us a little bit about your story and everything, how you guys met. But I want to hear it because again, she had said something about that you'd seen me out somewhere at some like a long time ago.
We did a thing together. I can't remember if there was one at the Woolworth Theater. It wasn't the theater then. It was like a restaurant. I thought you had they like had a bunch of us come in and do like different boot camps and different stuff. I thought you were part of that one. And there was another one down in, I want to say in Cool Springs with Cookie.
Yes.
That we did out there at his place when it was for mental health awareness.
Oh my gosh, for suicide awareness.
Yeah.
We were all there.
And we did some kind of workout with them, and then we did a talk.
I did Move Fit.
And you did a thing there. Because it was more dancing. Like,
yes, that was Move Fit,
You had sticks. Did you have sticks?
I didn't have sticks. No,
that's
pound.
I don't remember what it was. I just remember it was like a dancing thing.
Yeah. That's so right, because we could not put together what event it was. And I was like, I don't know I don't remember.
I couldn't remember the guy's name. I told her, I was like, I couldn't remember the guy's name. And then he popped up on my page the other day because I know he had battled a lot of different things in his life or whatever. And he popped up with a mental health thing.
Right.
I thought somebody had told me he passed away, but apparently he didn't. So which is good because he was always nice to me. I don't know what his dealings are with other people, but he was always great to me. So.
Well, the thing is, what's so interesting that you even say that is that just about like Move Fit in general. So many people will talk to me all the time. They're like, "Yeah, you remember that event?" And sometimes I've written down what I think is all the events I've done before, and you've probably thought back on all the things you've done, but it's like I completely forgot I even did that. So it's just so interesting.
But it was a decent event. I mean, there was quite a few people there, but. We do so many of them, you know, and I go out of state and do them and things like that.
Yeah.
And, that was the first time I'd ever seen you in action. I'm like, oh yes, I said this girl goes at it, you know.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'd seen your boot camp signs or something around.
Because in Cool Springs, when I first started my business, it was in 2017.
Yeah.
Before that, I was teaching at a corporate gym and then going to Healthways, Nissan, doing a bunch of stuff. But then fully coming out with Danity Fitness, it was like August 1, 2017.
Right.
But I started off with like classes. So I had my bands, I had shirts given out.
Yeah, I remember.
So
I used to see them all the time. The big DANI kind of
I
thing.
love that.
I remember seeing them.
Okay, that makes me so happy. So guys, marketing. It's important. People remember it. Like I try to tell it to people all the time. I think that so many times, especially people are like bashful when it comes to like starting a business and like, and they don't want to talk about themselves and whatever. Like you have to.
You got to.
If you don't, no one else will.
People. I mean, I listen. I tell people all the time. They'll be like, "Oh, it seems narcissistic to get on there and talk." I'm like. Who else is going to advertise my business but me?
Right.
So it's like, yes, I'm talking about my business because it's my business. Mm-hmm. You don't look at a guy that's advertising his roofing company and be like, oh, that guy's narcissistic. No, his business is roofing.
Exactly.
So he's talking about fixing your roof. I'm talking about fixing your body. Your roof, you can fix that every 20 years or whatever, get warranty on it. You're in your body for your entire life, So, and it's funny, just being, we'll probably get into it in a minute, but I was over 500 pounds, at one point in my life. And I've lost all this weight, and it's funny because I'm still a big guy. I'm still 340 pounds, but you lose all this weight and everything. And then somebody asked me the other day, did you gain it all back? I'm like, have you ever seen a 500-pound guy?
Right. No, because people have no concept. They have no concept of what.
Well, and like I said, I think that, an average human, average guy's probably 210 pounds, 200 pounds, something like that. I don't know, maybe it's less than that. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think of it on a daily basis because I'm still athletic. I still work out every day. I still do all my stuff. I don't always see myself as that much bigger than a lot of guys because a lot of the guys I hang out with are bigger than me, or stronger than me. But then I do think when I get around my buddies, like a lot of my musician buddies, I mean, they're like, it would take 2 or 3 of them to make me sometimes.
Right.
So it is odd to think about.
It's so interesting you bring this up because I feel like I've dealt with that my whole life because depending on what scenario or what room I'm in, I'm viewed completely differently from like room to room.
Oh yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
Right? And it's so, and I even went in high school, I will never forget this picture of these girls, and we were all friends, but they're like, this is the level of their height, and then me, like, and I was like crouched down.
Yeah.
But I just was always taller.
Yeah.
I always weighed more, but even at my like smallest or whatever, I still just have a bigger frame.
Oh, yeah.
And so you just kind of get used to it, and then especially when I would hang out with
You're
like
a Viking girl,
right?
you know?
Yeah, and like, and when you hang out with like strongman dudes, you're like, oh, I'm not that big, you know, and then it's just hilarious.
Well, every one of us, you know, I've competed and done my stuff, and I was wanting to get really heavy into it, and I'd become friends with Robert Oberst, had become a good buddy of mine. You know Robbie. So I'd become pretty good friends with him.
I can't. Okay, cool. That's cool.
Oh, hey, we've been friends. We became friends in I guess it was probably 2017.
Okay.
But anyways, we become buddies and started doing some stuff together. And he won our first ever strongman competition we put on.
Okay.
We did it in New Braunfels, Texas. We had him, Adam Dirks.
Wow. Adam came on the podcast too.
Yeah, Adam's great. He's been a buddy of mine since then. Brian Vickers. What's his name? World's Strongest Gay. Rob.
I know who he is.
Rob Kearney.
There you go.
And there were several others that had all competed in World's Strongest Man. And I mean, we ended up having 3,000 people show up to this event.
So
and
I didn't know you put on a strongman comp.
Oh yeah.
Like, so was that something you were doing regularly, or was
no,
that like one time?
It came to me. My buddy Brian Vickers called me, and he was like and he was one of the only ones that was drug free, like tested. But he had set some kind of record on bench press.
Yeah.
And me and him become buddies because we were both under Labrada Nutrition was the sponsor for me at the time. I was their weight loss guy.
Yes. Okay.
And so I got to meet all these guys that work with them, all the big, you know, what's his name? Cage Sanderson or Sage. I can't remember his name. He did MMA.
Okay.
And then they had, what's the girl? Like one of the most famous, Julia Eason.
Okay.
Blonde, little tiny blonde girl.
Okay.
But she was like huge in the female fitness sport. Anyway,
Gotcha.
got to meet all of them, got to meet Lee Labrada, and Lee
Yeah.
was awesome, and his son Hunter and all those guys. Well, they had introduced me to Brian because they wanted Brian to do better at making social media content, and I was making good social media content. So it's like, y'all two need to collaborate, you know?
Yeah.
And so we started doing that, and he goes, I got this idea, and I got an investor. We want to put on a strongman competition down in Texas. He goes, but we want to do it to where you actually win money.
Yeah.
And so we had a $10,000 grand prize for the grand prize. We've paid for, they got a $1,500 minimum paid to come out there, plus all their flights, hotels, food, everything was covered. Which
I wish I would have heard about
the food bill alone was
yeah.
insane. And we wanted to have men and women's category, but just the amount of time we set up in the Harley Davidson parking lot dealership.
Yeah.
We had the car carry, we had the truck pull, we had the Hercules hold.
I love a truck
We had
pull.
a double car deadlift.
Yep.
It was great, you know, and the competition went really awesome.
That's awesome.
But you know, Adam actually did. There was only one guy that beat him in the deadlifts.
Okay.
And I can't remember, the guy outweighed him by 120 pounds.
Yeah.
But he lifted the car 17 times, the two cars 17 times.
I mean, I believe it.
And I was sitting there, I was like, dude, I could do this. And so I got to talking to all the strongmen that day. I'm like, man, I said, I think I could do this, you know. I mean, I've never trained like that, you know, because it's more athletic. You got to train a lot more athletic than just powerlifting.
Yes,
Powerlifting is
thank you.
Pick it up, put
Say
it down.
that again.
Pick it up,
Like,
put it down.
yeah.
Whereas in this, you got to be able to pick it up, run 30 yards with it, set it down, go back and pick up another one. So you got to have athletic ability in this as well. Mm-hmm. And so it's just interesting how those competitions work.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was like, I think I could do that. And so I started training really hard, you know, and I was, you know, I got up, my biggest deadlift I ever got was 700 pounds. And I thought I was the cock of the walk, you know.
Yeah.
And then there's guys in there 900 pounds. You know, Adam Dirks in there. I weigh 100 pounds more than him, and he's in there not 100, but like 60, 70 pounds more.
Yeah.
And he's in there just crushing. I'm like, dang. And I just, you know, become a fan of his and just a friend of his, you know.
For sure.
And then Kim, back when they were still married and everything, Kim was freaking what a beast, you know, she was. Yeah. But I fell in love with it, and then, you know, I got to talking actually one day and realized what I was going to have to do in order to get to the true level. Yeah. And because I was diabetic once before and, you know, all the other stuff when I was 500 pounds, I'm like, man, I can't risk that. And not to mention my voice is how I make my money for real. Like I really make my money being a singer and a songwriter.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
All that stuff. So I couldn't risk having Trent cough or any of the other stuff. So I was just like, man, I want to do it, but I don't want it as bad as I want this, and especially since there's no money to be made there, really.
100%.
You know, unless you become one of the greatest in the world.
Yeah, but even
but even then, it's still hard.
It's still hard. Yes.
Yeah. So I just kind of bailed on that, but I was training for that first competition the day that I hit 700 pounds, which I guess was theoretically, what was it, 695 or whatever.
Okay,
but,
gotcha.
Whatever it was.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it
fine.
actually added up to, but to me it was 700 pounds.
Yeah.
And I just always say it because it's easier, but it was actually a little less than 700 pounds. But anyways, I did the deadlift, got done. I was walking around peacocking, all that stuff, and it was at our gym that we were co-owners in. And then I was walking over to the rower, and I was just going to go row. I was beat. My wife goes, "Hey, you want to do sprints with us?" Now it's her and a couple of her little bodybuilding friends, and I'm like, they weigh 106 pounds, soaking wet, and I'm like, "No, I just deadlifted, 700, 695, whatever it was."
Yeah.
And she goes, "Yeah, we're going to race anyway."
Oh.
And then my ego kicked in. I was like, "Well, screw that.
Yeah.
I'm racing too."
Right.
Well, I got about 3 steps into that race, and something popped. I mean, it didn't break. I didn't fall. It just went pop, 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 and I couldn't move my entire ankle.
Vinny, no.
I was just sitting there. I was just looking down. My left ankle was just sitting there hanging. So I one-legged hop over to our box jumps, and I sit down on the box, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, well, if you know Les Whitley, do you know Les?
Oh, yeah.
Phenomenal trainer.
Okay,
one of the smartest guys I know. He comes over. He goes, "I think you tore a tendon." I'm like, I was like, I don't know, man. I was like, he goes, "Well, it's not moving. So that means something is not making it work,
Right.
He goes, "I think you tore a tendon." So I'm like, all right. So I go to the doctor immediately.
Yeah.
They go through, they do x-rays. Well, normally when your peroneal tendon or perineal or however you say it, your tendon pops up, it rips the bone off the side of your foot and kind of rolls up the side of your leg.
Yeah.
Well, mine didn't do that. It shredded, but they didn't know that. So they said, "Oh yeah, you're fine. Nothing's broke. It's just an ankle sprain.
No.
We're going to put you, rest, ice and this and that, and we'll put you in this and you'll have to recover, but you'll be fine." So I do that for like 4 months.
Yeah.
Now this is June 28th when that happened. It was on my birthday in 2019. Now we get all the way, it's like back to November. It's swelling up sometimes and messing up, 4 or 5 months later, whatever. So finally I go back to the doctor. I'm like, "Hey, something ain't right."
Right.
I've done the rehab. I've done all the stuff. I was working with some great people. I said, "It ain't right." I was like, I'm back to where I can walk again.
Right.
I was like, but I can't pivot. I can't sprint. I can't jump. I can't do none of the stuff that I usually do. And in that time, I'd already put on about 10 or 15 pounds just because I couldn't go walk for 5 miles.
Right. Yeah.
Used to, me and my son would walk. During COVID especially, but this is before COVID, we'd go walk forever.
Right.
But anyway, I go up to him and say, "All right, well, let's send you in for a MRI."
Yep.
So going for the MRI, and of course, the technician's not really allowed to say anything. He goes, Oh, that's not good.
I love when they do that.
I was like, "What is it?" I can't tell you.
Yeah, they can't
I'm like,
tell you.
Mother effer.
Yeah.
I was like, "Okay." And he goes, "Well, the doctor has to tell you." He goes, "But I can tell you." He goes, "You're going to have surgery."
Oh my God.
He goes, "I'm not supposed to tell you that, so don't say nothing." I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm not telling you. I don't know who you are."
Right.
But either way, he goes, so the doctor comes in, he goes through it. He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Man, you're shredded." And so the tendon had shredded. It looked like chewed up bubble gum.
Yeah.
And he said, "So what we're going to have to do is you're going to have to send you in for surgery." So I go over to the bone and joint clinic.
Yep.
Get the surgery scheduled with Dr. Durr, who's amazing.
Okay.
And surgery scheduled for March of 2020.
Oh,
because they didn't have any openings for
Right.
that. He didn't have any openings for that, and he was the specialist. He's the guy that you want to work on your ankle.
Yeah, you got to go too.
And they said, "We can give you a different guy." I'm like, no, I want the best one. If I've already went 4 and 5 months on it, I can go another 3 months, 4 months, whatever. So they schedule it for March of 2020. March of 2020 happens. COVID happens. They cancel all elective surgeries.
No.
Well, by this point, I've worked around it. I've learned how to use it. I've been on it for 7, 8 months.
Yeah.
And I didn't get the surgery until 2023. January 6th. So I walked around on it like that. And the reason I got the surgery then, I wanted to go get stem cells. I wanted to do anything else other than get surgery.
Right.
And I was trying to figure it out.
Did you trial that? Did you do the PRP or anything? Or?
The only place I really had, Ed Clay has a place down in, I guess it's in Tijuana or below Tijuana.
Okay, yeah.
But it's like $100,000, plus you got to pay for your trip. I was like, man, I ain't got that kind of, and the insurance don't cover it.
Right.
So I can't really do that. And maybe I could have called him and worked out a deal, but I don't ever want to do that to people. Like, I don't want to go to your business and be like, "Hey, give me all the free stuff."
Right, yeah.
And I'm not a big enough celebrity anymore to where he would be beneficial for him. So, and I'm not, I'm not, I have enough narcissism to know that I'm not that great anymore. But anyways,
we'll get into that.
So I go in there and I do my thing and finally get the surgery done. 12 weeks non-weight bearing in a cast. They had to completely realign. They had to cut the tendon off the bottom of the foot, realign it, sew it back in. So it runs down the side of your ankle and it normally splits off into two and goes around the ball part of your joint and it's there to stabilize and make it where you can pivot back and forth and all this other stuff. And keep in mind, I'm not a kinesiology, blah, 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 but this is just me listening to what they say.
Yeah.
So they run it all, instead of running on both sides, they run it through one because they were going to have to take a piece of my hamstring out to fashion a second tendon.
Yeah.
And they said, it's going to be better if we just run it through the one, because if not, it's going to be, we're going to have to crush some bone and do a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I said, whatever you think is best. So he does that. Now, get it done, start going to therapy, doing all my
Right.
stuff. And he's like, yeah, he goes, well, we need to figure out when we're going to schedule the second surgery. And I'm like, now for 12 weeks, I was non-weight bearing in the cast. I get my leg out. My leg's like this big around, and I got big old massive legs, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, I'm like, what do you mean second surgery? He goes, well, and then on the second surgery, we got to run 2 pins up the back of your heel to fuse the joint. And then we got to cut out a piece of your toe so we can lower your arch because your arch is too high.
Right.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like,
And this is...
he told me, and I probably was just like, okay, I just get this surgery done. I didn't realize when he said it's 2 parts, I thought he meant he would do 2 parts in that thing. Like it was 2 different things he had to do while he was in there. And so I said, why didn't we do it all at one time? He goes, dude, the amount of pain you'd have been in, and he goes, plus I couldn't keep you under that long.
Right. So
he said, you're already a big guy. I have to use a lot on you to keep you under anyways. Yep. He goes, it would have taken me 14 hours. And he goes, I can't do that much in one sitting, basically, and be efficient. So I did all that rehab, got it back to where I was back walking and feeling good. But when I would walk, it would almost feel like the backside had no support. So as I was walking, it almost felt like my ankle was falling back in like this.
Yeah.
So they go in, they do a second surgery, put the, things, fuse the joint, 12 weeks, non-weight bearing in a cast. Go through that whole thing again. Then, of course, you got the walking boot, then you got the rehab. And I'm working with Rachel over at, I can't remember the name of the place, but Performance.
Okay.
Rehab, whatever it is in Cool Springs. I'm working with her, or in Brentwood, whatever it is. I'm working with her, and she was phenomenal. And she got it back to where I had range of motion, where I could get stuff going and things like that. But it's taken me until now to get back. I did my first deep squats. I say deep. I broke parallel with 485 the other day. And that's the first time I've went for me, used to, I could put 450 on there and squat out 8 to 10, And I was like, but when the heavier weight, when I get down, it would make my ankle want to turn over.
Right.
So it was the first time that I felt like, okay, let me push the weight. I just kind of stayed at 315. I'd went up to 405 a few times and done 2 or 3. And I'm like, okay, I was like, at least I can do a little bit. And then the other day, so I was like, I put on some weight the other day and tried it out. And I was like, all right. I was like, that makes me feel, maybe I'll get that 500-pound squat again.
Yeah.
And then my wife kind of hit me. She goes, why?
Right.
I was like, well, because.
No, yeah.
But she finally, she's look, she's like, I'll be 42 this year.
Right.
We're not ever going to make money off of you lifting weights. And I was like, well, I said, people love my content,
Yes, yeah.
And she goes, I get it. She's like, but let's focus on mobility. So I'm actually, I'm detoxing. I'm doing one of her detoxes now, and I'm down about 14 pounds in the first week, which most that's water weight.
Right.
And of course, I take creatine. I take 200 milligrams of testosterone, Cypionate every single week, and all that. So if I have, which I didn't cut off the testosterone, but I cut back on my creatine for a moment.
Yeah.
I started taking it again this week, and I haven't had any puffiness. Or normally for
That's
me,
great.
for whatever reason, when I take creatine, I will hold about 5 pounds of water.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like it's useful water because at least you're being hydrated.
Exactly.
And things like that.
Yeah.
And it's always been good for me. But I think some people see that weight and they get all freaked out or whatever. But anyways. My focus now is like, okay, let's get under 300 pounds this year.
Yeah.
Let's really focus on it, get you back down to that. Me at 275, I get down to about 22% body fat, 23% body fat if I'm at 275.
Okay. Well, so
if I can keep all my muscle.
Yeah. So this is what I was going to talk to you about, because you said a couple of things in there, which is hilarious. But so you were in Franklin, you said, at this time, and when all that happened, 2019. Yep. Okay. So wherever you were at, in 2019, so your birthday's when? June
28th.
28th. Okay. So my birthday's July 7th.
Yeah.
So July 6th,
Cancers.
I know, right? I knew I liked you. But so I went to a gym out like an hour away where it was like a strongman gym to do my PR for a deadlift.
Oh, was that
and it was like
what's his name?
Seth owns it. I couldn't tell you what it is, but yeah.
And I think of the Tennessee Strongman or whatever his name is.
Well, Blake was not at that one, but this is before. So when Strongman, okay, before Blake had like a gym and spot or whatever, we all would go to all these different gyms together. So the only reason how he got kind of built up and everything was because me and Matt did so well. So me and Matt and him were just like the three amigos. Right. We would go to this
Matt
gym.
McQuiston?
Yes. And so
I love Matt.
Yeah. And that was my trainer. So and so what Matt told me was basically, he's like, you're really strong. And I started working with him because I had started my business and I was like, dude, I need something for myself. And I saw that he was really caring at this event. And I got second place at a competition. And I was like, I need a trainer. So I got with him and he was like, you're really strong. You should do a strongman competition. He said, I'm not going to do any more. I did one. I was good at it, but I'm not going to go to the nationals, whatever. And I was like, okay, well, so he connected me with Blake. Me and Blake talked for hours. And then he was like, come to this gym. And then we're like, all meet. And I was like, okay. So we meet. And then he was like, yeah, we should go to this competition a week from now in Kentucky. Yeah. And I was like, I'm not going without Matt. And Matt was like, I mean, I guess I'll come. Me and Matt go, we both win. So from there,
great.
it propelled us. Then we went to nationals together.
Yeah.
And then, so anyway, so 2019, that was when I ended up flipping the tire. But a week before that, I deadlifted 425, and that was my PR.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I'm like thinking about when you said that. I know that when I was done with that PR, I was like, I'm not doing anything else.
Yeah.
I'm going home. I was also celebrating my birthday, but I was like, I'm out of here. But when you said about the sprinting, that's totally something that I would have done because it's like just to
well,
kind
I
of.
wasn't going to do it until she said we're going to race.
Exactly.
You know?
It's that exactly.
I can't beat her in a race anyways. I don't even know why I thought I could.
Right, but it's those
my
moments
mind works like that.
And that's like so. And I got injured like 6 months later at a comp and that's what ended up not being able to feel my leg for like 3 years. So like my vertebrae shifted forward, crushed my disc, and it blew it out. So basically, I had nerve damage, and like I still have a little bit of it right now, but had to start it from scratch. Yeah. So when that happened, but it was that moment where I knew. I looked down and I was like, "Don't pick up this weight." I still could have qualified for nationals. I was beating everybody. Like I still could have qualified. But you see what I mean? Though I was like, but I remember being like, and God telling me like, the weights are too low. You already have a pre-existing back condition, whatever. I still did it, carried it 60 feet, 400 pounds, 60 feet, then did a 405 deadlift for 4. And, and then the next day, couldn't get out of bed. So anyway, but then all the stuff happens where like I had an elective surgery a week before COVID. You know what I mean? And so I was like, there's so many parallels and stuff. So I understand like how like the mindset and how like negative it can be. And then I will tell you this, when I basically pulled every tendon at Bonnaroo, being silly, doing a roundup back handspring, and I slipped and fell and I landed all my weight. I went down and I had just done it perfectly. But then somebody was like, I missed it. Do it again.
Oh yeah.
You see what I mean? And so, and I was working by it. It wasn't like I was drunk. I wasn't whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway. And, but after that I was like, somebody get me a beer. Because I was just in so much pain.
In fact, bring me about 6 of them.
And and so anyway, but my ankle swelled up this big, but it took me, I mean, like probably a year and a half, 2 years just to feel normal and get my arch back because I was a dancer. So it was like very little. And then like the other one was completely. So anyway, but that was, I just remember how excruciating that was. And I had to be in a boot and I just sat for like.
And then you get the boot. If you don't get the level up, your lower back, your sciatica, everything.
Yep.
I mean, after the first time, I'm like, I'm going to find out whatever I got to do to pull me up to even.
Yes.
When I did that, the second time was so much better. Just having that level up thing. I'm like, why would y'all not just sell it with the boot?
Right. And here's the thing. Go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say, no, I had to borrow a boot from somebody. Like I didn't even get to go to the doctor at this point. Like I was in college, whatever. Anyway, and so it was like, we'll just let it heal, whatever. But the whole thing is that mentally though, this was right when I was like into my healthy lifestyle journey. So I was about 2 years in.
Yeah.
And so I'm in school, and whatever. And like, I remember for my 21st birthday, I had to wear a freaking boot, and then I was doing downward dog and weightlifting because it was my summer electives for UT in the boot. The guy was like, "You still got a back squat if you want to pass the class," and I was like. Noted.
Yeah.
And did it. But you know what I mean though? But it was just like, but I just know that like, again, if I would have been, because like how I've been injured here recently and stuff with all the things that have happened mentally, how did you deal with like that? Because again, you came from The Biggest Loser.
It was tough for me because I was used to, I was probably different than most guys that were, still in that 270 to 300 pound, range. Because, on Biggest Loser, I lost all the way down to 242, but that was with about a 20-pound sweat out the night before I got on, on the final stage and all that. So I was really 265 or so,
right? Something
like that. When I was really there, 262, something like that. I was still going out and running 2 and 3 miles every morning.
Right.
I would just get up and go run.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it because I'd put in my little head, and I only run, 4, 5, 6 miles an hour.
Right.
I pace myself. I don't try to get into it. I'm like, I know that my heart rate's at a zone that's going to, burn, which I mean, the zones are kind of, how they are.
Yes, I do.
Regardless, I was at a place where I felt like I was going to be burning and doing okay. And I did, and I kept the weight off, and I did that for 5 straight years after Biggest Loser. I ate the exact same meal plan, 2,400 calories every single day.
Yep.
Nothing but egg whites, chicken, rice,
Does that sound
spinach.
familiar to anybody?
I mean, I ate the same thing, and I ended up getting divorced, and from my first wife, and that's whenever I started dating my wife. You know, so that was, I did that for. So it would have been 2011. So it was 12, 13, 14, 15.
Okay.
So 2015, I guess, is when we first started dating, seeing each other, whatever.
Okay.
And she looked at me and she was training, and she had just won the Flex Lewis. She got second place there. And she goes, yeah, I'm going to have a big meal tonight. Do you want to do a cheat meal with me? I'm like, cheat meal? She's like, yeah. She's like, you don't ever do a cheat meal? I'm like, no. I was like, I eat this exact plan every single day, every day of my life. And I had no problem with it. I was good with it.
I know. I was the same way.
And she said, She goes, well, are you getting anywhere? And nothing in my body was changing, you know.
Right.
I had done well. I'd met a buddy of mine named Seth Cab. I don't know if you know Seth, but he was the one that kind of introduced me to bodybuilding and helped me kind of start forming my body. And he was the first one to get me off of just doing 2,400 calories and doing, you know, I was doing 3-4 hours in the gym every day.
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
Because luckily for me.
Does it not sound familiar?
Yeah.
Except let's put it at like 1,600
my lifestyle,
calories.
because I was an entertainer, my lifestyle took place at nighttime, getting on stages, singing, playing, and and I would make my money on the weekends. So during the week, I mean, I was kind of almost free.
Yeah.
During that time, and I had a stepson at the time that loved like my own.
Yeah.
And I was married, but she was running her little furniture company, and so I was kind of just there by myself every day. He'd be at school, and
so
I'm
might
like,
as well like go spend it at the gym.
I would get up. This was my routine every single day, no matter what.
Yeah.
Every day, 7 days a week. I would get up at about 6:45. I would go drink my BCAAs. I'd go straight outside and I'd do 3 miles.
Yep.
So from where my driveway was to the end of it, there was this big hill you had to go down, which was great going down.
Okay.
You'd run all the way to the end. That was 1.5 miles. And then you come all the way back. Then you had to do the hill at the end, and it was a big hill.
Right.
And, it might as well have been a mountain at that point when you're on your way back.
Yes.
But I would do that every morning. And every single day I do it. Well, then I'd come in, I'd eat my breakfast. I'd usually have 2 cups of egg whites, probably 2 cups of spinach, and then I would do a cup of oatmeal with a little bit of peanut butter and stevia.
Yep.
So I'd eat that, and I'd go straight to the gym. I'd digest for a minute, but my gym was 15 minutes away. So I'd go to the gym, HG Fitness in Spring Hill, which is Spring Hill Fitness now. I'd go there, and I'd do the way I'd start off is I'd take a tire, tie it around my waist, and I would take it for at least a mile.
Oh my gosh.
Running, jogging this thing.
This is
Oh, dude, because on Biggest Loser, you set your mindset to like I'm gonna outdo everybody.
Yes.
And so I would do that. Then I would come in and I would start lifting weights, and I'd do a ton. I'd do an hour and 10 minutes of weights, and I'd hit everything from 6 different positions. You know what I mean? I was doing kind of bro splits where I was just doing a certain body part every day.
Yep.
Like if I'm doing bis and tries today, I'm going to hit bis 6 different ways. I'm going to hit tries 6 different ways.
Yep.
And I was doing probably 30 seconds recovery in between each one.
Yep.
And a lot of times I was doing active recovery where I'd do jumping jacks or whatever in between.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Looking like a crazy man.
Yeah, I would do that.
There,
and then I'd get done with that and I would sit there and I'd, be like, man, I'm the man. You know what? I'm going to go do some more cardio. Then I'd go into the cardio room and I'd do 25, 30 minutes of just steady state cardio.
Yep.
This guy walks up to me named Seth, and like I said, Seth Cab, he's great. He looks at me, he goes, man, you're the hardest worker I've ever seen. I'm like, that's right, I'm the hardest. And in my mind, I'm like, hey, nobody going to outwork me.
Yeah,
He goes, you're the stupidest worker I've ever seen. But, and I'm like, huh? And he's all shredded up and looking good, and all that. I'm like, whoa. I don't even know you, bro.
Right.
He's like, hey, I'm just saying, I see everything you're doing. He goes, and I know you're the guy that was on Biggest Loser, and I'm proud of you for what you've done. He goes, why don't you give me 1 month? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, what do you weigh right now? I was like, I think it was about 270 or so. Yeah. I had stayed right in that 260 to 270 range. I'd fluctuate back and forth in between that. I wasn't really getting any stronger. I wasn't, but I was staying. I was fine. I was maintaining.
Yeah.
And so he looks at me, he goes, what'd you give me? He goes, what do you eat? I said, I ate 2,400 calories every single day. This is what he goes, let me bump you up to 3,200.
Yeah.
And I'm like, 3,200. I was like, dude, I can't do that. I'll be fat as hell. I'll be 500 pounds again.
Yep.
He goes, let me bump you to 3,200. And let's eat every 2.5, 3, 4 hours, at most. Yeah. He goes, give me at least 5 times a day. He goes, let me put you on about 8 ounces of protein per meal. He wrote out the whole thing for me. He goes, I want you to do this. And give me that 1 month. He goes, I want you to come in and do 45 minutes of lifting.
Yep.
And then 25 minutes of steady state cardio afterwards. Well, the thing I noticed was if I did my 45 minutes of lifting, when I would get on there, because I always wanted to, at that point in time, I wanted to keep my heart rate about 125 to 130, 135 was where I was wanting, because I was in my 20s still, or I was might have been 31. But I was trying to keep it there, and I would get on there, and dude, I could just walk and keep it at that because my body was already oxygenated and all this other stuff. So I was like, dude, I ain't got to kill myself to stay at this heart rate,
Yes.
Hey, what's going on? I'm Big Vinny, and you can find me at Big Vinny Official on all social media platforms, everywhere you look. You can find me on Spotify, Big with 2 G's. That's BIGGVINNY Official. Check it out. .com. You got all the links you need. I'm Big Vinny. I love you. Peace out. Holla.
If you haven't yet checked out How to Love Your Body Throughout on Amazon, please go do so. It is my passion project. It is something that is so special, and it's a tool and guide to help you love yourself more throughout your journey. Whether you're in a bodybuilding prep, whether you're a mom of 4, or you're someone that's just looking to love the body that they're in right now, I highly encourage you to check out the book on Amazon, as well as you can reach out to me with any questions. And if you're able to share this with a friend or loved one, please do, and help supporting the mission to help everybody love their body throughout their journey.
Well, that's exciting. But I started eating the meal plan, and after the first week, I'd gained 2 pounds.
Yeah.
And I was freaking out.
You freaked out.
2 pounds. What do you know? And, and it was 2 pounds over what like my heaviest had been.
Right.
And I was freaking out. He goes, you told me you give me a month. You got to give me a month. Well, about a week after that, like the first 2 weeks were like, only gained weight, and I'd kind of maintained then after that. Well, then I don't know what happened about week 3. I started peeing about 7 times, and I was drinking over a gallon of water every single day. I started peeing like 7 times a day, 8 times a day, all this other stuff. Next thing I know, 5 pounds dropped off, 6 pounds dropped off, 10 pounds dropped off. I got all the way down to 238, which was lower than I got to on Biggest Loser with the sweat out.
Yep.
But I was then bench pressing the 100-pound dumbbells for sets of 10 like it wasn't nothing. I was like, whoa.
You feel strong.
This feels really good.
Yeah.
And I did that and was really focused. And he had convinced me, like, you need to do a bodybuilding competition.
Okay.
And he was going to be my coach and all this other kind of stuff. And I'd kind of fallen in love with it, but then we started talking about supplements and the things that you have to supplement with, how much the gear costs and all that other kind of stuff. And in order to compete in a bodybuilding level, whereas for me, I'd always competed in lifting. So it's like, you don't have to be lean and lift, or whatever. But in order to, do the lean stuff and all this, I'm like, dude, I'm not going to take Tren and Winstraw and then do a bunch. I mean, some of those guys were doing insulin.
I know.
I'm like, I was diabetic. Yeah. Oh yeah, they take insulin. It's super anabolic. So they'll take that insulin and it'll rip the fat off them, controls your blood sugar, keeps you from gaining weight, all this. And I just said, man, I'm not willing to do that. I was diabetic. Whenever I was on before I went on Biggest Loser, I was diabetic. And of course, my A1C stays below 5 now, even at 340 something pounds,
fantastic, yeah.
But anyways, I just told him, I said, man, I don't love it enough to do that. And I don't see it. And not to mention, even when I got to 238, I was as strong as anybody that was, in that range, but my body was so messed up from all the weight loss and the saggy skin and all that. I'm like, man, I don't want to get on stage. Like, he goes, Vinny, that's all the more reason you should get on stage. Look what it'll be. I said, yeah, but I don't want to be, man, you look good for a guy that used to weigh 500 pounds.
Right.
If I want to get on there, I'm going to get on there and win. And the problem is I can't get on there and win without doing this other stuff that I'm not going to do.
Right. So I felt that with Strongman because eventually it got to the point where...
Yeah, you're going to have to microdose testosterone.
The girls, were literally behind me in the picture, in the videos, doing more than like what my coaches could do. They were, you know what I mean? So I was like, they're on so much, like for me, I'd always be the natural girls. Like you can't touch me. Like on that sense, like I was fast, I could lift well, everything was great, right? But when it came to the steroids, they would beat me by the strength stuff. So if I'm doing 405 for 4, they're doing it for 16, 20 reps. Yeah. And I'm like, with the axle and like handles and everything. So for me, it wasn't fair.
And my thing was, I don't have a problem with anybody doing that.
Right.
If that's what you decide to do, I think it's cool.
Yeah.
You do what you want to do.
Right.
Just for me personally, I was like, man, I can't get into that because I don't ever want to be diabetic again.
Right.
I don't ever want the bottoms of my feet peeling off I don't ever want to feel the way I felt. Right. And I didn't even know I felt that bad because I was an entertainer.
Yes.
So I was on stage every night, every day is a holiday, every meal's a feast. Whenever I was 500 pounds, I was still Big Vinny.
Yeah.
I was on tour with Toby Keith and I was doing all these great things. My songs were doing good on radio. And so I didn't have the same kind of mindset that a lot of people that are 400 or 500 pounds have.
Right.
Because I was like, dude, I still
you're
got
confident,
hot
you're
girl,
excited.
I still got everything going my way. I feel great about everything.
Right.
But then when I started losing that weight, and it actually happened. So I went out to audition for Dumb and Dumber 2, the first time they were going to make it.
Okay.
So my lawyer in LA is Cindy Fairley, which is the Fairley brothers that made Kingpin, Dumb and Dumber, something about all the greatest movies ever. Their sister, Cindy Fairley, is my lawyer out in LA. And so she told me to come out. They had a part that they might want me to audition for. So I went out there, showed them everything I do, all this other stuff. She's like, and then we get to the end of it. She goes, I love you. I think you're great. I'd always just let her deal with contracts. I didn't really know her,
Yeah.
She's like, I think you're awesome, but I was like, but I'm the greatest of all time.
Right.
She's like, the problem is, if we use you in movies, you're going to be used as the fat guy that runs through in a Speedo because you got enough confidence to do it. You're not worried about what anybody thinks.
Yeah.
She's like, but that's all you're ever going to be, slapstick. Right. And I was like, why? I was like, look at, Chris Farley or John Candy. She's like, they were 350 at most. You're 500 pounds.
Right.
Like you're a whole nother human bigger than them. Mm-hmm. And so we got to put you on a screen like this, or like this, I guess.
Yeah.
We got to be able to put you on a screen and it doesn't make any sense, know? And I was like, okay. She goes, you need to go lose a couple 100 pounds. Mm-hmm. Now in my mind, I immediately was like, I can do it. And then get back to my brother's house. He lived there at the time. I get back and I'm like, how the hell am I going to lose 200 pounds?
Right.
I was like, well, I'll figure it out. I can't be Big Vinny if I'm not big.
Right. Yeah. Can you hear? Oh, yeah. Okay.
basically, I'm turning them both. I was going to ask you. You were saying a second ago that about you didn't really think about it because you were doing all. Even more than that, did you like kind of identify with it? Like I'm big.
Yeah, no, that was my persona.
There's your persona,
Big
yeah.
Vinny, you know.
Okay.
And so I was worried about that, you know, especially as I started Biggest Loser. But this is pre-Biggest Loser, or right before.
Right.
So this is in the end of January.
Okay.
Of 2011.
Okay.
I'm out there auditioning. Everything went good. Well, I get back to the house that night at my brother's house, and I'm laying there. I start to have this really bad pain in my leg. And I'm like, dang, and I'm feeling it. It's right up beside my stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's this knot down there, and I keep kind of feeling the knot. I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Right.
And I'm sitting there, so I get on WebMD. I was like, well, it's either a hernia or a cancer. That's what I deduced the problem down to. And so I was kind of freaking out. I was like, well, I hope it's not cancer. I'm like, it's not cancer. You know, my mind is always, I'm a positive dude.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the least of the worst situation. Whereas a lot of people are like, dude, what if it's this? I'm like, it ain't that, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to be flying home. The next morning I was supposed to go get on a plane, fly home, all this stuff. Super Bowl Sunday. You know, it was that year it was the Steelers and the Packers. Yeah,
Okay.
and it was Steelers and Packers, and I was at that point in time I was decent friends with Aaron Rodgers, and you know, so I was excited. I was pulling for him. I was pumped. He at one point dated Hillary from Lady Antebellum, so he become friends with a lot of us country guys that came out around that same time, and we become friends with him. I was actually a Favre fan anyways because as a kid we didn't have a football team here, so you had to find somebody to identify with.
Right, yeah.
Then after we got the Titans, I'm like, screw everybody but the Titans, you know.
Oh my goodness.
But anyways, I get this. You know, this knot and everything. I get home, it's Super Bowl Sunday. It was a couple of days after I'd got the knot or whatever. I can't remember what it was exactly, but it was like February 2nd or 3rd or however, whatever day it was that year. And it was when we still only had 16 games instead of 17.
Okay.
So it was a little earlier in the thing. But we go out and I'm on the plane. I'm like sitting there and I'm talking to my then, girlfriend who became my first wife and everything. Okay. I was like, man, this knot is killing me in my leg.
Right.
But we got to get home. I got to make my cheese dip. I got to get the Super Bowl party going. I used to own an old church right off of 46th Avenue in Georgia right down the road here.
Okay.
And it was an old church we took and turned into a house. And we had the biggest parties of all time there.
Okay.
So I'm like, dude, we're going to have a Super Bowl party tonight. I mean, the congregation was the same, but then we put a big TV up there where the baptismal was. So
okay, all right.
Anyway, felt a little sacrilegious, but the church is the people, not the building.
Right, correct.
But anyway, so I'm planning on having this thing. I get in the car, and all of a sudden, I was like, hey, do you mind driving? My leg is killing me. She goes, okay. Drove me straight to the hospital, emergency room, got out, walked inside. She goes, you need to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not going to go to the doctor. I'm going to go to the doctor on Thursday. I got this today and that tomorrow and blah, blah, blah. And had all this stuff I was going to do. I'll be fine. I can handle the pain. I'm a man,
Yeah.
So anyways, I end up going, finally going in there. And, luckily there was a girl sitting at the front desk that was a girl I went to high school with named Caston Heath.
Okay.
And I told her, I was like, listen, you got to get me back here quick. I got to get this. Now, keep in mind, I got Cindy Fairley, woman, telling me to lose weight. Got my, at the time I wasn't engaged to her, but my girlfriend, now she's making me go to see about this thing.
Yeah.
I'm kind of getting a little tired of women telling me what to do. Then I got Caston. I'm counting on Caston. Then I get back there and it was a Sunday. So, all of a sudden this girl walks in and it's a doctor and she's like, well, where's it at? Where's it hurt? I was like, well, it's like beside my junk here.
Yeah.
I was like, she goes, okay. She's like, well, we have to see it to know what we're dealing with. I'm like, you're a girl,
Oh.
And I was kind of like, and she's like, yeah. Now my girlfriend's in there with me, you know? And she's like, we're going to have to figure it out somehow. She goes, well, I guess you'd rather a guy be down there messing with it. And I was like, no.
Oh my gosh. These are the options I got.
So anyway, so I look at my girl, I was like, so I drop trowel, and she's done her filling, figured out what's going on. And they take, a little cut a sample, they do their whole thing. And I'm like, what the hell's going on?
Right.
So she comes back. Now I'm getting pissed off now because it's like almost time for Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I got this little TV in the room that I'm going to end up watching this thing on. I'm like, damn it. Well, she comes back like literally an hour and a half later. I'm like, what in the hell is going on? She goes, do you know that you have diabetes? I'm like, I did not know that. And I didn't know. I had no clue because I never went to the doctor.
Right.
She goes, yeah. She goes, yeah, you're going to need to lose some weight. I'm like, you know what? I'm about tired of people telling me I got to lose some weight.
Yeah.
I'm Big Vinny, you know?
Right.
And so anyway, she goes, you're going to have to lose some weight. She's like, we're going to have to get you on, diabetic diet, all this other kind of stuff, which the diabetic diet they give you is not really the greatest diabetic diet. There's a lot better diets to go on than the one that they give you at the doctor's office. But either way, she's like, yeah, you're going to have to do this. I'm like, okay, great. So I just need to go lose some weight and I need to do this diabetic diet. And I'm good. She goes, no. She was like, we got to go to surgery. I'm like, surgery?
Oh my God.
I was like, for what? She goes, well, that big old knot on your leg is called cellulitis.
Okay.
And it's a bacterial infection in your leg caused by your blood sugar being over 500 when you're just sitting here. Like your normal, just everyday blood sugar was over 500. I was like, what's it supposed to be? She goes, 100 or under, you know? And she was like, okay. So she, you know, they said, we're going to go to surgery. She goes, if you'd have waited, you was going to come in Thursday, you said? I said, yeah. She goes, if you'd have waited till then, she goes, we'd be cutting your leg off because it'd be gangrene. We'd be cutting your entire leg off and possibly other stuff.
Yeah.
She's like, so you're a good thing you came in. So, you know, my first wife likes to say I owe her my arm and my leg, you know, and she took it when we got divorced. So it was all
gosh.
good. We're actually, we get along fine now. I wouldn't call us friends, but we're friendly, you know, we don't hang out or nothing like that, but we get along fine.
Okay, good.
But either way, now she's telling me what to do. All these people telling me what to do. Well, I get about 6 days in, I'm still in the hospital 6 days later.
Right.
I got a call from a girl named Dana DeSilvio, who was on the very first season of Biggest Loser.
Okay.
And she calls me and she says, hey, I want you to audition for Biggest Loser.
Yeah.
I'm like, how many more girls are going to call me fat?
Right.
You know, this week. You know?
But like, literally.
And I'm like, I don't want to do that stupid TV show. They just take people on there and make fun of them for being fat. That's terrible. I don't want to do that crap. And I mean, she only weighed 180 pounds when she went on the show. Okay. But that first season, like 240 pound people are like, oh my God, look how fat they are. You know? I was like, 240 pounds. I ain't sniffed that since I was 11 years old.
Right.
You know? You know, but anyway, so she, I hung up on her or whatever. And then, you know, my girl at the time, I looked at her and she goes, who was that? And I was like, that was Dana DeSilvio. What did she want? Mm-hmm. I was like, well, I said she wanted me to go on The Biggest Loser. I said, I mean, here I am trying to figure out how I'm going to lose weight, how I'm going to fix this thing going on in my leg, all this other stuff. And she's talking to me about some stupid reality TV show. And all of a sudden I sit over and look, and she was like looking at me like I was the dumbest person in the world.
Yeah, literally,
she's like,
here's how you're going to lose it.
She's like, you're an entertainer. You have somebody that's going to get you a direct audition for the show.
Yeah. And
it's a weight loss show and you need to lose weight. And you're going to get exposure on television. Why would you not go do that? I'm like, I don't want to be made fun of. Blah, blah. She's like, when's the last time you watched the show? I said, I ain't watched it since they kicked her off. She was the first person ever kicked off. I watched one episode.
Yeah.
She goes, I think we should go watch the show.
Yeah.
And so I went ahead and called Dana back and said, hey, I'll get that audition. Now, she had no clue I was in the hospital.
Oh, okay.
She didn't know.
Right.
So sure enough, she, you know, sets me up with the audition. That was February 26th. So we had like 3 weeks to recover. Mm-hmm. I had this big old hole in my leg. They had to stick gauze in there every day and change it out and all this. It was awful. But anyways, I ended up going and auditioning, you know, and I literally get in there and there's like, you know, 11 or 12 people at the table.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and they say, okay, tell us your story. And everybody starts talking.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy crap. So I just jump up and do the worm. You know, I used to break dance, you know, I still break dance.
Right.
So I jump up and I do the worm and they're like, okay, you tell us your story.
Yeah.
So I go full into, I'm Big Vinny. I'm on, you know, I'm on tour with Toby Keith. I'm bragging on myself and all this other stuff. I was like, and I need to lose this weight because I want to be in the movie Dumb and Dumber 2. You know, like I was my whole thing. They're like, great. Okay. Well, you can take your thing, just put it in the basket when you leave. And I'm like, I'm like destroyed. I'm like, they don't want me. Oh, man. Well, I don't get more than, you know, 10 minutes outside of it. And I get a call back from this guy named Brendan Nickens. He's like, dude, we loved you. Yeah. Can you come back and do another audition tomorrow on camera in our solo room or whatever?
Awesome. I'm
like, heck yeah. And now I'm like, my competitive side, dude, I might get on this show.
Yeah.
So now I'm starting to think this could be a good thing.
Okay.
So I go back now, I do my audition. They loved it. Everything goes good. And then they fly me out there. So, hey, April 19th, I think it was, you're going to have to fly out to California and stay at the Four Seasons. It was awful.
Right.
We had to go stay at the Four Seasons, but you were sequestered in a room by yourself, which for me is like hell because I'm a social, I got to be around people.
Yes, for sure.
So I sit in this room all day watching freaking Dr. Phil and whatever.
Oh, man.
You know, but the thing was I weighed 450, I'd already lost down from 500 to 453 pounds when I weighed the day I left was 453.
Okay.
I get there and then I'm in that hotel from April 19th.
Yeah.
Check this, until June the 1st.
What?
So it's not an audition. This is where they're narrowing it down to who's going to actually be on the show.
Yes. Okay.
So you're out there and they're running medical tests. I mean, Biggest Loser was different than any other reality show because they want to make sure you're not going to die.
Correct. They want to say that they can
push you. And we had to go out
and,
early because there was quite a few of us that went out early because they were looking at potential somewhat celebrities that had been on there. So Anton Davis, who was a UT Knoxville alumni, he was on my season. Okay. And we were on the same flight. And I looked at him, I'm like, dude, I know that's Anton Davis. Mm-hmm. I know my UT guys. I'm like, that's freaking Anton Davis. But I'm like, there's no way he's going out the Biggest Loser. I mean, he was 6'7", whatever he is. I'm looking at him. I'm like, nah. He looked like he was still beefed up. You know, I was like, hey, he ain't going out there for that. And I see us, we get off and then get on the same thing. And then I see two different cars pick us up. And I'm like,
my gosh.
then I see him at the hotel. I'm like, uh-oh. I'm going to have to compete against that dude, you know?
Right.
So your mind starts thinking, well, then Phil Margera, Bam Margera's dad, was another one that was there to potentially audition and be one of the somewhat celebrities, in which he was probably more famous than me, or obviously more famous than me or Antone. But anyway, so we get in there April 19th, and then we're there for like a week, and nothing really happens. And we go and we start taking a couple minutes, and I start to notice there's a lot more people showing up. Now we're like beginning of May, you know, and all this kind of stuff. And then we do, you know, several weeks of just like them talking to us. Well, from April 19th, because being in the hotel where I couldn't just go eat whenever I wanted to and have, you know, food at my beck and call and all that, when I finally weighed in for the show, I weighed 426.
Okay.
I had lost from 453 down to 426 just by being in a room, you know.
Right.
But also in my mind, I'm like, well, they're watching us. So I started going to the gym every day.
Yeah.
I started getting on the treadmill and walking every day. I'm like, plus I wanted to be out of the room.
Yeah.
And so, and it was down by the pool, and there was, you know, hot girls walking around the pool. So I'm like, I can go out here and walk on the treadmill and look at girls at the pool.
Right.
Great.
Yeah.
So I'm out there, you know, doing that thing every day and walking, and then just, you know, I'm like, well, they're probably watching what we're eating. So I started eating like grilled chicken out of the, you know, the bags of grilled chicken.
Yep.
And I had, of course, I had deli meat. Of course, I'd bought some, you know, some random bars that were, you know, supposed to be, you know,
healthy,
or low glycemic, whatever. So I done all this stuff, but you know, naturally lost 20 something pounds waiting on it, or right out on 18 pounds, whatever it was. I'd lost this weight. Well, I get into like the day that we're actually going to do the final weigh-in for the show.
Yeah.
And we're not supposed to be talking to anybody with this guy in front of me named John, who happened to actually win the show. He goes, "Did you load up?" I'm like,
yeah,
I'm like,
that's
huh?
see, yeah.
He's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Did you load up?" I'm like, "Load up? What does that mean?" He's like, "Did you eat?" Because I've been holding my shit in for 3 days. I'm like,
my gosh. Yeah.
and I didn't know that. I didn't think about that.
Right.
You know? And so I was sitting there, I'm like, that's pretty freaking smart. You know? I wasn't thinking about it, but you know, he was like a mega fan of the show. He loved the show.
He knew.
I'd never watched a season until that, you know, the one right before one, which had Hannah, Curly. You know, Hannah probably married to Pate Young.
Okay, yeah.
So Hannah was on the season right before me.
Okay.
And so anyway, so I literally, I'm sitting there thinking, damn, dude. I don't know, but surely I didn't lose any weight. I had no scale. I didn't, and they wouldn't let us see our weight. When they weighed us, they didn't tell us.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay. I was like, well, whatever, it'll be fine. Well, we get on there that first, you know, and the first week was actually 14 days, but I lost 21 pounds.
Yeah.
But it was 21 real pounds.
Yes.
He lost 37.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's based on percentage, but it, you know, but that first weigh in, they're telling you when you weighed you and you weighed 426 pounds.
Yeah.
And then I never forget, Alice says, how does that make you feel? I'm like, dude, I feel great. I've already lost 20 pounds.
My gosh,
you know?
they're expecting this like sad.
Yeah,
I
mean, I weighed 453 when I left the house. I'm like, holy crap! They're like, your starting weight is 420. And of course, I'm sitting there thinking it's going to be 453.
Yeah.
You know, so I thought I was going to be the heaviest guy to start because I think the heaviest was 447.
Okay.
Maybe on my season.
Okay.
But mine was 420. I was like, dude, how is that possible?
Yeah.
How am I not the heaviest? And I looked at myself and I looked heavier, but John was 6'3", 6'4".
Yep.
Antone's 6'6", 6'7". You know, I'm like, okay. And so, anyways. Sure enough, you know, they tell me I'm 426. I'm kind of happy about it. I'm like, dude, I've already lost weight. Does this count towards it? But it didn't count
They're
towards
like,
the show.
nothing. He's like, nothing can get this guy down.
Yeah. Oh, no, it was hard to get me down for the most part. Then we got that. We did the first competition. We had to go in the middle of Death Valley or Salton Sea, whatever it was.
Okay.
Do what? So we weighed in that day, and then they come back. I think it might have been the next morning, or actually might have been that night. They come in and they took us all in a room, and there was 15 of us in there, counting me. And they said, if you're in this room, we regret to tell you that you have made the show, and it's about to be the hardest 6 months of your life. You know? So when they said we regret to tell you, I'm like, wow, we're fixing to get cut. You know, like we regret to tell you that you've made the show, and it's going to be the hardest 6 months of your life.
Yeah.
And as I was leaving, the guy named Todd Lubin, who was the executive producer on that season, they were from Reveille, which they did The Office and several other pretty big shows. He comes up to me and goes, in 19 blah blah blah, or you know, whatever it was, or 2000 and whatever it was, he goes, we did Nashville Star. He goes, and I'll never forget, there was this guy on there named Butter, and he sang this song called Rockin' the Beer Gut, and he was my number one pick because I love the song so much. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay. He goes, but the talk that everybody talked about was this big old guy down in front of the stage dancing while his buddy was on stage playing Rockin' the Beer Gut. Me and Butter were already in the band Trailer Choir, but he had got a chance to audition because Tracy Gershon, who was also one of the producers on it, knew Butter.
Yeah.
And which ended up being his demise because she actually hated the Beer Gut song.
Oh, man.
But regardless, he goes, I just remember seeing you there. And he goes, I just remember you being such an entertaining dude. He goes, and I got to make the decision for you to be on the show.
Oh,
And he goes, and then because this is as we're walking back to the room, he goes, don't let me down. And I was like, I won't. I will do a great job on this show.
Yeah.
And we got out there that first day, and we had to carry this pole. It was 50 pounds, but there was 5 of us, like 10 pounds apiece. We had to carry it for 1 mile.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, dude, I used to run miles at football all the time. This won't be nothing. But I hadn't tried to run a mile in forever. But I was on stage for 4 hours a night sometimes.
But
so I'm but it's a different kind of thing.
Totally different, yeah.
So we take off, and I'll never forget, Ramon was like, dude, we need to take off running as fast as we can. Now, he was playing semi-pro football at the time.
Yeah.
No, Ramon Madeiros was his name, but he was from Arizona. He was half Samoan, half Mexican.
Okay.
So he had this. I mean, he was like the typical Tongan guy with the tattoos over here, and then of course he had the Mexican side of it. Like he's a wild man. I love him. He was my best friend on the show, and we were blessed to have actually a really great season. Most everybody got along really good. But he's like, we're gonna take off running as fast as we can. We'll get like quarter mile ahead of them. They'll never catch us, So it was divided into ages, You could be up to 29 years old and you were or up to 30 years old and you were on the young team.
Okay.
If you were middle age, you were, I think it was 31 to 50.
Okay.
And then 50 and up was the silver sneakers.
Okay. And this time you're how old?
I'm 28.
You're 20,
well, I was 27 actually. I turned 28
So you're
while
with
we were
the
there.
young crew.
So I'm with the young crew, and now everybody weighs 70 pounds at least less than me.
Okay.
And the girls are over 100 plus pounds less than me.
Right.
So I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, so we're going to take off sprint. I can sprint, But I said, what if we like jog for like 10 seconds and then walk for 10 seconds, and then jog for 10 seconds, walk for 10 seconds? What if we did that? No, we got to get ahead of everybody. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to fight against the team. I don't even know how this works. I'd never watched, I didn't even know how voting went. I had never, I watched one season of it and I didn't pick up on, how it was done. So like, whatever, let's go do this. We take off sprinting and I'm like, okay, we get like 70 yards, maybe 70.
Right.
And I am gassed.
Yeah.
I mean, I am out. I feel like my legs are like numb, like I can't feel them. And I'm like, dude. Well, we were pretty far ahead of everybody. Everybody else kind of just started off with a light walk, whatever. Of course, the silver sneakers were way behind, but they had Bonnie who had 2 knee replacements and all that. We knew we wouldn't be last, but we're walking and I'm just like dog tired. Well, about that time, the middle age group starts coming up and they're walking 10 seconds, jogging 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And Antone yells over, thanks for the strategy.
Yeah.
And of course, all the rest of them are still good to go. They could have kept running.
Right.
But I'm dragging the whole team down now.
Yeah.
And I'm like freaking out. I was like, dude, they're probably going to be a thing at the end where I get voted out just because I drug the whole team down.
Right.
But regardless, we get to the end of it. I think it took us 21 minutes or 22 minutes to do 1 mile,
Okay, yeah.
And we get there and we get to the end and we didn't know who the coaches were. We saw the 3 helicopters land, and the first helicopter was Bob, and everybody's like, yes, it's Bob, which I was kind of like, yay. I don't really know that much about him. I saw him on one season.
Yes.
Some of these people were super fans of the show, and they were a lot more prepared than I was. And then this girl lands, and she's this smoking hot blonde. Now, they had already revealed her as one of the coaches, Anna Kournikova.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, okay. So then all of a sudden, this dude lands. He's got good-looking black dude, shredded to pieces, got these big diamond earrings, this big old smile. I'm like, it's freaking Terrell Owens.
Okay.
I was pumped. I'm like, dude, it's freaking Terrell. We couldn't hear what they were saying. She was over there talking, but all we hear was boop, 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 helicopters. We can't hear nothing they're talking about. We have no clue what they're saying. And they tell us, like, whenever they say this, just give a big reaction. Like, yeah. Okay. So they tell us, I was like, well, if it's got to be Terrell Owens, And that's what it looked like to me from over there. So we get to go in. Of course, the people that are ahead of us, they went and got Bob. So whoever got to the end got to pick their coach. That was at the end of the competition. So they went and they got the first advantage, but they went over and they picked Bob. So they went and picked Bob, and then we were like, okay. So us guys, there was 3 of us. We're like, we're gonna get Anna Kournikova. You know, the 2 girls were like, nah, we're going to that dude.
Oh man.
And of course, I'm telling everybody, dude, it's Terrell Owens. It's Terrell Owens. We get up there and we run up to him, and I end up standing on the red flag and not realizing it. He went to hoist it up because we had to hoist the flag, and he pulls my legs out from under me, and I fall down.
No way.
And of course, it made it look like, oh my God, is Vinny, like the commercials? I never forget, like, Vinny fell down. Is he okay?
Oh,
and like, stop it. The way they edited it was so dramatic.
Yeah.
And I'll get up, and I'm like, and I told him, I said, bro, you pulled my feet out from under me. And he goes, well, I must be pretty damn strong if I was able to pull your feet out from under you.
Oh my gosh.
I looked at him, I said, you ain't Terrell Owens. He goes,
right.
That's racist. Oh. And I'm like, no. He goes, dude, I'm just messing with you completely. He goes, you don't know how many times a day I get that. He's actually a way better looking dude than Terrell Owens.
Okay,
but
who was it?
Dovette Quint. So he was Justin Bieber's. He was on tour with Justin Bieber. He was his trainer. He was Tina Turner's trainer.
Okay.
He had trained a lot of big time celebrities and NFL athletes and all this stuff. And he's phenomenal. He's a great trainer. Great personality. Now on the show, they kind of had him this militant guy, like, get your hands off my treadmill.
Well,
no. But he ain't like that at all. His real way of coaching is like, I believe in you. You just need to believe in yourself. Like that's more of the kind of coach
so
he
do you know
is.
Jen Wiederstrom?
Yeah.
Okay, so I met her a few months back, and we did a workout together, and she was telling me about how that she was like, I'm not an actor. She was like, I'm a fitness instructor. Like she's like, and that's how they kind of made it.
I got to meet her briefly when I went out after that season.
She was just saying that like how they made it seem was like you had to be that like that's why Jillian Michaels was portrayed in the way she was because she was trying to be an actress. Like she was trying to be like that intense. Like,
she wanted to be hardcore.
Yeah, and so that's not really how they are. And so it's like she's like, so I tried to be like
Bob's exactly how he is.
Is he? Okay.
Jillian wasn't on my season, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Once I met her one time, and she was very nice. I mean, I didn't have any.
I met her at a meet and greet, and she was lovely.
There was nothing bad. You know, she definitely. I mean, we were in a spin class at one of Bob's spin classes.
Right.
You know, that was off site when we had a dark day.
Okay.
Anna Kournikova was great. She was sweet to everybody. You know, she was constantly, missing her. She was engaged.
Oh gosh.
At the time to Enrique Iglesias, which I think they're married.
Oh, are they really?
Yeah. Which it was funny because we were talking and then they pointed out. Ramon actually pointed out. He goes, Enrique Iglesias in English is Eric Church. Enrique is Eric and Iglesias is Church. I was like, wait a minute, Eric Church? I wonder if that's Eric Church's real name.
Right.
Oh, so Enrique Iglesias is Eric Church. But either way, they were all nice. Everybody was nice.
Good.
I got along really well with everybody, but Dolvet was a godsend for us. It was his first season.
Yeah.
And, on the show, there's definitely, the doctor gives you, hey, this is your caloric count you're supposed to hit.
Yeah.
And this is what you're supposed to do and everything else. And then, there's, some techniques that have been there. It was on the show for way too long, but it would basically be, for guys, they were cutting down to 800 calories a day. Some of the girls were doing 500 calories a day and all that. Now, you were told this is the calorie you have to hit minimum.
Right.
Mine was a minimum of 1,800, but my goal was to hit 2,400 every day.
Right.
And you're supposed to stay within those guidelines in order to compete in the show. But, it's very easy to be like, oh, yeah, I ate 7 ounces more, or I ate, whatever.
Yeah.
But for us, Dolvet would check our logbooks and it made sure, like, hey, I want to make sure you're eating what you're truly logging. Yeah. He would come with us sometimes while we were cooking and make sure we were doing stuff. He told us, he's like, it's so crucial that you don't cut your calories so much that you lose the muscle mass.
Yes.
He's like, you're gonna naturally lose some on the way down. Well, I didn't. I gained 11 pounds of new muscle mass and filled up a total of 27 extra pounds of muscle while I was on the show.
Yeah.
At a caloric deficit.
Right.
So I always see all these, people, these scientific people, they're like, no, if you're a caloric deficit, you're gonna lose some muscle. I lost none.
Yeah.
I gained 27 pounds. 11 of it was new muscle.
Yeah.
Crazy. While I was on the show and at a caloric deficit of, there was days I was burning 16,000 calories. On my body buff.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to ask you.
But my body was eating that fat, so it was using that stored energy, that stored nutrition,
Right. And I wanted to ask you that real quick because like mentally, because I've seen post things from women that talk about like their time on the Biggest Loser and stuff like that. And it is just, it seems like there's so much psychological warfare that goes on afterwards because like you said, you literally ate that because it's the fear of gaining weight again.
You're so afraid of it.
You think there's the only way that it'll work.
And at the time,
you.
the show was still very, very popular. I mean, we were season 12 in 2011.
Okay.
And so the show was pretty popular. I mean, it was 10 million people plus watching you every Tuesday night.
Right.
So when I first came off the show, it was the first time ever. Like with Trailer Choir, we had gotten pretty famous, because of our song. But more people knew our song than knew our faces.
Right.
Whereas on TV, people know your face, so they would see me at restaurants and come over to say, "What are you eating?"
Yeah.
And honestly, even at restaurants, I'd have chicken and broccoli.
Right.
I mean, I would be like, no butter on it, cook it fresh. And which was a very chaotic way to live. I mean, you have to learn the balance of life, which is a big thing for me in my mental health.
Yeah.
But I was scared to death of gaining that weight back because it's like, dude, I want everybody to think I'm a failure. I don't want to let people down. You know how many other people wanted to be on that show that didn't get to be. Don't be that guy,
Right.
And so you do have that fear, and for a long time, I fought it and fought it and fought it. And then I started to realize, like, if you've been 500 pounds, your body knows how to get to 500 pounds.
Yeah.
So you do have to be meticulous. You can't live like everybody else lives exactly.
No.
But you also can't live in this shell of thinking you're never going to be able to eat a piece of birthday cake with your little girl.
Exactly.
Or whatever. And I see people go to that extreme, and I'm like,
yeah.
I understand the feeling because I've been there.
Right. Same.
Which this is honestly what makes me a good trainer or a good coach. I'm not the smartest guy when it comes to stuff. I naturally have always been a strong dude and could lift heavy weights.
Yeah.
My form has gotten better over years of seeing other people doing like, oh, that will protect my back more if I don't bend over so much, or I don't hunker my back into a U shape whenever I'm going down to my squat. So I've learned that over time.
Yeah.
But what made me a great trainer was like, hey, I can take a guy that's 450 pounds and I know how to train him in a way that that he's going to feel like he's succeeding,
right,
as opposed to feeling like a failure, which is going to keep him motivated to go and do all that.
Now, everyone, thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the LYB podcast. If you ever have any questions about wanting to train with Danny Fitness or getting your movement in, please feel free to reach out to Danny at DannyFitness.com, as well as you can follow me on all social media platforms, Danny Fitness 1.
Lose 25 pounds the first month. That ain't even the goal. The goal is to get you where you're actually functioning enough that you can go walk a mile.
Right.
That we can get you to get up out of bed without feeling like you're going to die.
Change the mindset.
You know?
Exactly.
And so that's the way it's helped me be a better trainer. And of course, experience, changes everything. I mean, my wife, and I don't even know if y'all talked about it, but when I first met her, she was that trainer that was, well, you just got to eat right and exercise and you'll lose weight and it's fine.
Right. Yeah.
She had done bodybuilding. She never had any babies. She never had any hormonal issues. I mean, she had PCOS, but she had learned how to deal with that.
Oh, yeah.
But now, after she had babies and, she didn't have her first baby until 35, second baby when she was, or 36, 37.
Yeah.
Remember, she was almost 40 when she had our second baby. The damage that it does to a woman's body and the hormonal things and taking a lot of people don't even realize they're taking prenatal vitamins and it's full of, what's the thing it's full of? I can't think of it right now, but it's good for you while you're on that. But when you stop taking it, afterwards, and you're supposed to take postnatal vitamins or whatever, your body has now gotten used to having this certain thing, and now you're not taking it. Now you're taking something different. So it's just this fluctuation up and down.
Well, it's a traumatic event.
Yeah,
and people don't realize that.
And she had 2 C-sections in 3 years. Getting that C-section, I mean, that's dramatic to the body.
Right.
She was holding water. I mean, and then, of course, we didn't know her implant had ruptured inside of her.
Yes.
And so we were like 9 months out. And after the first baby, she bounced back. She was ready to, she was working with Tony Haynes with that bodybuilding crew. And they were getting ready to do, we was getting ready for the next competition.
Next show. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she was looking great, shredded, 6-pack has come back, and she lived with a 6-pack, which most post-bodybuilding show people don't live with a 6-pack. They gain, they do their bulk and all that. She lived with that because she always did flex dieting. She never did the whole, 600, 800 calories and tilapia and asparagus. She still did flex dieting. So she had lost that weight and she was feeling good about herself, get her pregnant, find out, she kind of canceled what she was going to do for competition.
Right.
But after the second baby, it's like, we're 9 months later and she's still bloated out like she's 9 months pregnant.
Right. I remember,
And I'm like, something is wrong, you know? Well, we spent $30,000 going to real doctors,
Yeah.
Which is why, there's always these arguments. People are like, well, you don't trust them. They're not a real doctor. I'm like, well, hang on a second. We went and spent $30,000 going to real doctors, people that have the education, the
and when it comes, and when it comes to women's health care, they're so far behind on what that, you know what I mean? And there's only this bandages to help with
we
things.
We went to, and of course, then we did the whole lymphatic doctors. She went to the gynecologist. She went to the emergency room a couple of times. She was having attacks on her body. All this stuff, we could not figure out what was going on in every one of them. So we actually went to her guy that put in her implants.
Right.
It's like, hey, is something wrong? They're like, no, everything's fine. And it looked like it was. It wasn't deflated, none of that. She literally found this guy named Dr. Cabral, and he was an integrative health practitioner, and he has some kind of doctorate or whatever.
Right.
But he was talking about the ways he had naturally healed himself through all these other stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, me, I'm like, that's mumbo jumbo. That's garbage. That ain't real.
Right.
You just need to go to a doctor.
Yeah.
But sure enough, she went to him, and he said, hey, he's like, I think that there probably is an issue with your implants, but let's do these tests. And they ran these tests. She had all these metals in her liver and all this other stuff that was going on. Well, finally, she has a dream one night.
Yep.
Wakes up from the dream, tells me we had just moved to a new house. We were still unpacking. She goes, I had a dream last night, and God come to me in my dream and told me that I need to get my implants out.
Yeah.
And I looked her in the eye and said, I am 99% sure that was the devil.
Yeah. Right.
And she goes, no, I'm serious. I'm like, why? I was like, we already got it checked. There's nothing wrong. She was like, I think there is. And so she had found this guy, Dr. Adam Tarola, I think was his name. And everybody had suggested him. So I'm like, well, I'm going to go find out about this doctor. I go look. I mean, he literally looks like he walked out of the GQ magazine. Oh. I'm like, of course all the women love this doctor. Look at him. I was like, I kind of got a crush on him, Joking, kind of. Yeah. But anyways, I was like, so this guy's going to be touching on your boobs? I was like, the other guy was like this old, dude that, in a lab coat. He looked like this guy looks like he's,
a model,
going to take you home with him,
Right.
And it was so funny because we took her mom in with us when she went in for her official surgery day.
Yeah.
And we walked in and Mom goes, oh my God, you are just stunningly gorgeous to the guy.
Right.
And he's like, thanks, whatever.
Yeah, he's like,
She's like, oh. She's like, it's almost like I'm getting the vapors.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, so they go in, and of course they had found out, yes, she did. It was ruptured. It was ruptured inside the capsule. So your body makes a natural capsule around the implant.
Right.
Well, it was ruptured inside there. So it was slowly leaking silicone right into her lymph nodes.
Oh my gosh.
So no other doctor caught that. Nobody else caught that. The people that caught that was the plastic surgeon and Dr. Cabral.
Right.
And his testing ran. So it's funny now because my wife, whenever she'll post a thing saying, I'm an integrative health practitioner. And all this. Dude, you don't know how many people jump in our DMs that are nurses or doctors, medical professionals that like, you should never say that you're a practitioner and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I said, I'm an integrative health practitioner. Yeah. Not that I'm a doctor or that I this other stuff. However, I would be willing to put my wife's knowledge of the human body and training and diet and exercise up against pretty much 90% of all doctors in the world. Yeah. Because I can tell you what a doctor is going to say to you. Hey, well, let's go get you on some metformin. Let's put you on some diabetes medicine. Yeah.
Well, and that's like, and I've said this before too, but like I had for a season of time, like my girls that would come into the LYB, they would all say to me, yeah, I went to the doctor and they said I need to do this and this. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I just heard they told someone else to do. And then that's what they're pushing like the Ozempic and all that. And I was like, do you realize that you're this body and she's this body and she's this age?
Completely different. And you're 21 and she's 48.
Exactly. I was like, do y'all not think that's a little odd?
You've had 3 kids. And she's had no kids,
Correct. And they tried to put me, the lady didn't even look at me. She literally looked down. I was like, so I hear that you're having a problem losing weight. And this was when I was like actually like post bodybuilding, but I was having issues with my eye, had an autoimmune issue, disorder and stuff like that. And all that to say, I was like, I looked at her, I'm like stacked. Like I'm just like sitting there in a tank top and shorts. And I was like, no, that's not why I'm here. And she's like, oh, well, what is it? And so I'm like, so you were preying on that.
She was looking at the chart and looking at your BMI and all that stuff.
Exactly, yes. And I was like, no, that's not. I'm actually here because I haven't had a cycle in 3 years, like a period in 3 years. Yeah. And she was just like, oh, well, that's never going to come back unless you do this medicine and whatever. And I was like, no, we're going to try. So I ended up paying my hormone specialist. And so I did her whole program, whatever. Within 3 months, got my period back.
That's great.
Yeah. Right? But again, so that's why I'm like, it can't be.
One size fits all.
It can't be one size fits all, and that's with the training, that's with the mission, with everything that I do. And so it's so awesome to hear that, like, again, even with the negatives that Jenny went through and the negatives that you've gone through, and whatever, it literally led you to being able to help so many people.
The solution, and it's led her, like, she gained a whole different purpose. She was that trainer. Right. It was like, you just need to diet and exercise. You're clearly not doing the work. Right. And for a lot of people, that's true. Yeah. I mean, when we worked for a company called V-Shred. Yes, I don't know if you know V-Shred, but we work for them. Now, the trainers that are there, Stacey McLeod was on the team. Me and my wife were both on there. Yeah. They have multiple Olympia people that had competed in Olympia, and even one that had won a championship in Olympia. Yeah. I want to say it was in female bodybuilding, not female body, but female bikini or whatever it was. But either way, a lot of people in there that had competed, and there's a lot of great coaches in the company. But when we were doing that, dealing with all these clients, it was so many people. And of course, they was like, carb cycling's for everybody. I'm like, well, not really. Right. And then they would, we, of course, on V-Shred, you're supposed to write meal plans and stuff. Well, people want the carb cycling. Yeah. But I would get people say, hey, I want a carb cycle, but I'm vegan. I'm like, well, I want to carb cycle you on a vegan plan. Right. Or I want a carb cycle, but I want to do keto. I'm like, well, that don't work. That doesn't work. Yeah. And then I would go to the people at the, the thing. I'm like, hey, they were like, hey, you didn't write this meal plan the way the girl wanted it. I'm like, because her request is not possible. Correct. Yes. I was like, I guess I could theoretically make it have 10 more carbs than this other day. Yeah. I was like, but how am I going to give her a keto plan and give her any kind of carb cycle? Yeah. I understand that because otherwise it's 20 net grams of carbs or whatever it is, Right. And I said, it's just not working that way. But but dealing with all those different people, we dealt with thousands. My wife, I want to say 35,000 meal plans over the 6 years she worked for them. She was telling me that, and which is crazy. It sounds like it was such They were getting 1,500 new clients a day. I just don't understand. I was riding. I would love to know how the SEO. They spend $1 million a month on. Okay, well there we go. But you got to think. Guys, but if you spend $1 million a month on marketing, which you have to have it to do, and you gain 1,500 a day. Now there was times it was less, and there was times it was more than that. Right. But just saying. So in the parts when we were super busy. 1,500 people a day. We had 90 or so coaches.
Yeah.
You know, and some people didn't do a custom meal plan. Some people were just buying the workout booklet or whatever. But either way, you know, I was doing sometimes 60 and 70 meal plans a day.
Yeah.
Now what happens is I build up all of my meal plans and I have every one of them in my system.
Yeah.
So I know if I got a woman that's 28 years old, she weighs this much weight, blah, blah, blah. So I have a basic structure of, you know, and she doesn't like broccoli or she doesn't like chicken or fish or whatever it is. I had a basic structure of that. And so I could go and print that one. And then I got to look through each day and say, okay, well, she doesn't like broccoli, so let me replace broccoli.
Yeah.
My favorite way to do it was like, hey, I'm going to give you a plan that tells you what you need. And I'm going to give you this interchangeable list of vegetables.
Which is great.
And an interchangeable list of proteins. But they didn't want to do it like that because they want you to be able to write it custom every single month. So they keep them on that $47 a month.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I said, the reason they need to be on a monthly plan is because we need to look at the results of what they've got.
Right.
So I can say, okay, we need to increase or we need to decrease or we need to add more protein or we need to add more fats or whatever. That's the reason we need to do it. Not because we want to just keep them paying for a new plan every month.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I said, it is worth having the coach every month. Either way.
Yeah.
We dealt with so many people and the stuff that it helped us really realize like, hey, I can't treat this person the same way that I did this person.
No.
It doesn't work the same way.
It doesn't.
Exactly. You have to look at their, and we really noticed that we get in the Facebook group and there was a Facebook group on there that had, you know, I don't know, 100,000 people or 300,000 people in it. And they'd be on there and you'd have one girl saying, I've been doing all my workouts and everything else just exactly like, you know, the plan says. And I haven't lost, you know, but 16 pounds, you know, in 4 months, 5 months.
Yeah.
Then you have another girl like, I lost 16 pounds my first 2 weeks. I'm like, and I would go in there, they would have me go in there and answer comments. And I'd be like, you know, the one woman was 41 years old.
Exactly.
And the other woman was 22 and you're not even the same thing. So just explaining to people, you're not that person.
Correct.
You don't go to the same. If they went to Danny's boot camps back in the day, they came to your boot camp like, well, she's had great results, but I'm not getting anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? Well, that's because you may not need to go as hardcore on some of the stuff. Whereas this girl's 21 years old, her body's going to recover like that. You might only need to come 2 or 3 days a week.
Exactly.
You know, you need time to recover.
And that's probably the biggest struggle, I think, especially with people, you know, as we're kind of like wrapping up and stuff. It's like when I look at everything and trying to help people, it's like, man, you got to understand that this is individualized for you. And I was given a cookie cutter plan and look what happened.
Yeah.
Major autoimmune issues, thyroid tanked, all this stuff happened. My left eye, you know, I have loss of vision now.
Yeah.
Like things that would have never happened, like should have never happened. But
and then this when you were doing bodybuilding.
Yeah. So after, so I was like you, like I ate the same meal. I didn't stray away from it for years. And it got to the point where it was just like, again, cycling the same thing. But I liked that. I was very militant. I'm like, good. Don't give me too many options.
It gives me the best results when I can do like that.
But it's not.
But also I can't live like that.
Exactly.
You know?
And I just confided myself into here. I just got very like alone and I was just training my clients and that was it. Like I didn't do anything for like 2 years.
That right there alone, especially if you got a lot of clients. At one point we had like 25 personal training clients.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, this is great. We're making all this money.
Right.
And then I was sitting there, I was like, dude, I don't even want to be in the gym.
Right.
I wasn't doing my workouts.
Yeah.
I was like, and that's when I realized either I got to charge more and have less people.
Yes.
Or I got to just realize that, hey, you're going to have to make money. You're going to have to make your money doing that.
Yeah.
But cut it at like, 7 to 10.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, and I was good at it. And I tried all, and I would give them my all when I was in the room with them.
Right.
But when you get that many going, you're like, dude, I've been here for 8 hours today.
There were some days I was training 18 a day.
Yeah.
And it was running myself and getting up at 3:30
well,
to do the cardio
because you don't
workouts.
think about it, but you're showing them the form, so you're lifting 2 or 3 more times.
Yeah. Oh, I was putting the weights on, everything.
Taking the weights off.
I was exhausted.
You're exhausted.
And again, everyone was great, and they were very proud of me when I did that. And again, it's different seasons, right?
Yeah.
Some days I was pulling trucks for strongman, and then and then the next time I'm sitting there eating the tilapia and whatever, right? And so again, it's beautiful to go through the seasons, but I should have personally, looking back, should have done the one show, been like, I did it, I feel good. I'm out. But because
that was my plan when I was going to do it. Yeah.
Right. But because what happened was I was instilled by this coach of like fear that I was going to get FAT again, right? Or whatever, which I wasn't. I was still struggling. You know what I mean? I went through grief and like trauma and whatever, but I wasn't. Anyway, neither here nor there. It was just one of those things of, it was a lot of manipulation. And, and I was like, man, I wish that someone would treat me how I do with my clients.
Yeah.
Why is there no one that can give me that support to be like, hey, actually, you're doing great in this season, but like, here's what we're going to do, whatever, but like not instill this fear of like, well, you might go back to what you were, or like, and I hate that. And that's what I see constantly on social media. And it's like, we have to speak into that and get that life.
And I've seen so much, and the stuff I see online, it's like, I see all the different ways of advertising.
Yes.
Sometimes they go and find the prettiest, girl that's 22 years old and she's in great shape and she's never not been in great shape.
Right.
And it's like, look what you can get if you do. I'm like, no, you're 41-year-old, three C-sections in.
Right.
You ain't gonna look like her. Now,
and guys,
it doesn't mean you can't get in your best shape.
Exactly. You can get in your best
shape, and you can reach some great goals, but you're not gonna have a 16-inch waist or whatever the girls are going for nowadays.
Exactly.
But even things, even with me, I'll see these guys doing their podcast, the Andy Elliott's and some of these guys. You don't ever want to hire a trainer that doesn't look exactly like this.
Right.
I'm like, that's not true.
That's not true.
Because I can go in the gym with any of you dudes.
Yep.
And you might be able to run longer than me.
Yeah.
But I'll go in there and bench press 500 pounds.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You can't do what I do. I can't.
Right.
I said, but one of the greatest bodybuilding coaches, Grandma of all time, that had like Sergio Olivia Jr. and some of them. Have you ever watched like Pump and Iron and Bigger, Faster, Stronger? Yeah. Like one of the greatest bodybuilding coaches of all time is this little old grandma.
Right.
Like if you have the knowledge, you have the knowledge. There's plenty of trainers out there that have great knowledge, but they don't get time to work on themselves, and they need that because obviously if you look like a certain way, that you're going to advertising is way easier. Right. But I've never went with that theory of just because somebody didn't look like. Also, you don't know where people came from.
Right.
All that.
But also, you can still be athletic. You can still be fit. Like you can still be, and it's just a different body.
It would even just be the fact of like me. Kim Dirks wrote one of my when I was first getting recovered from this, and I wanted to get back to lifting heavy. I was like, you know what? I love Kim. Her and Adam had just split. And I was like, I want to support her, and I will always support Adam too. They're both my friends. Yeah. I was like, I'm going to buy my plan from her. So I did 3 months at like, I can't remember what it was. It was, and she was just writing my program, not my meal plan. I think it was like 175 a month or 275, whatever it was. I was like, but I want something different that I wouldn't normally do because I know how to write what I normally do. But you tend to write the things that you're comfortable with.
Correct.
When you write your own plan.
Yep.
So I would tell people, I was like, well, if they're writing yours, then why wouldn't they write mine? I was like, because I need somebody to give me something that would be different than what I do.
Exactly.
And
and
two,
also,
you're my client.
Also, trainers can have trainers, and you should.
Oh, yeah,
and that's why,
should.
I love my hormonal coach. That's why I love, talking to different trainers and things like that. I mean, I had Adam message me earlier about business stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's again, it's a part of, being a part of the community. It's part of growing and being able to share with people. But also, just again, that whole thing that I started with, back 8 years ago, whatever. But telling people that, again, look at my hard work. Like, look at what I do. Like, I fight for every day. You see me in the gym, just like they see you in the gym. They see I'm always on it. Some people are like, oh, are you still like meal planning or meal prep? I'm like, yeah, I always meal prep my foods. Yeah. Like you know what I mean? There was never a time that I didn't, or use a meal prep service or whatever. Like I've always been mindful. So it's that whole thing of stressing to people that, like, again, you stop judging off of what they show you or what it looks aesthetically pleasing and look at the actual person.
Well, and also look, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I know when I'm getting too FAT. Yeah. I know that I can look at myself and be like, all right, bro, you need to hone it in a little bit less halo top and protein bars on the road. And my place, when I'm at home, I'm perfectly fine. For me, it's always when I go on the road, when I'm in airports, I'm going to go grab a Quest bar. I'm going to go grab this or that. It's a small and I'm like, I'm going to eat it real quick. It's healthier, Yeah. But your calories can add up really quick. People don't realize, especially if you're eating fats. Like if you're getting, I'm bad about eating nuts when I'm on the road because I'm like, they're healthy, blah, 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 which, really raw nuts are more healthy. But we don't get into all that. But I'm sitting there, I'm like, dude, I might have ate. Yeah. I might have just ate 1,500 calories of nuts.
Yes, exactly.
And so, I can be honest with myself and say that. But I also know when I get my numbers in, my blood pressure runs somewhere around 130 over 72. My A1C is, is always under 5. Yeah. Which is, most people would never believe that because a 340-pound man, I'm always under 5. Yes. But I don't hardly eat no sugar. You know, I mean, I realized a long time ago, was like, I don't need sugar. So I save my sugar and I'll have some Halo Top with my wife, which the Halo Top, to me, the sugar is the least of the worries. Right, exactly. It's more all the bull crap that they put in there to make it look like ice cream or whatever. Right. But it's 340 calories, right? Or whatever. But I'll stay away from that kind of stuff. But if I'm going to be at my daughter's birthday party, I'm not going to sit over here and not eat a cupcake. Right. I'm going to eat a cupcake with my daughter, and she's going to let her put it on my nose and whatever. We're going to do it.
Exactly. And it's just about keeping it in check and keeping it in balance of what, and like living your life. And so I do want to ask you, because as we're closing out, because I would have to have you back on. Yeah, I'll come back. I mean, we'll talk for hours still after this, I'm sure. But I ask everyone when they come on, like, what is something that you love about your body?
What I love my arms. You know? My arms have always, and even when I was 500 pounds, I mean, I was always had good triceps and all that. So I love my arms, love my chest. I've always had a big chest. I mean, I love my whole body.
I was about to say,
even when
I'm getting that from you,
even
which is
when I
great.
was 500 pounds, I thought I was the hottest dude in the room.
Yeah.
I used to tell people, I was like, dude, if well, back then I'd say Brad Pitt, but now if Chris Hemsworth walked in, I'd be like, hey, number 2.
Right.
Get behind me.
And that's exactly, that's
and
how
if he
I
got
am.
behind me, nobody could see him, so it'd be great.
See, that's how I am too. But that's the whole thing, is that people don't understand. They don't know how you can.
And honestly, me going on the show helped me so much because these other people that were on the show, some of them, they truly believed they were terrible humans because they were overweight.
Right. It was their identity.
They
lived
blew
in
my
that.
mind. I'm like, nah, dude.
No.
I'm a smoke show.
The two don't have to be. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be that way.
But one thing that I did realize is diabetes doesn't care how good you think you look.
Correct.
Heart disease doesn't care how good you think you look.
Exactly.
All that. But I know people that are 60 pounds overweight that are in a million times better shape than a guy with a 6-pack or a girl with a.
Yes.
And guys, obviously, a guy's body fat can be lower.
Yes.
Because it can. But women, your body fat percentage getting super low. That's when you lose your period. When
right.
you need some fat to get your body going, especially if you're going to carry babies and do all that other stuff.
Exactly.
So it's hard because society's given us this picture of if you don't look like this,
right,
then you're not in shape, and that's just not the case.
Or you're not worthy, or you're not good enough, and that's not true. And that's again.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, to me, I don't care how big you are. If you're good to people and you're kind, you're a good person.
Exactly.
Whatever. Now, most anybody that gets to where I got to, if you're 500 pounds, there's mental issues going on. Yeah. There's some kind of childhood trauma or some kind of trauma in your life. And just like a person would use cocaine or alcohol or food, food is the same thing. And that was my thing. It was like, if I was celebrating, I was eating. If I was sad, I was eating.
Yeah.
If I was
bored, I'm eating.
If I was bored, I was eating. Like my thing was food, and food made me feel better. It hit that dopamine in my brain. I get the little dopamine dump and I feel good. Well, it started off 1 or 2 McDonald's cheeseburgers and it was 6 McDonald's. Back then we had the dollar menu, bro. You aren't gonna believe this. All you young guys watching this, you used to go to McDonald's and you could walk out with a $20 bag of food to feed most people for a whole week, but me for about 35 minutes.
Right. No, but
yeah, it's pretty.
But it's been seen as, because we're gonna close out here. But as it's been seen from society, it's like they look at like the drug stuff. Like, well, that's a mental issue or whatever. But food, how dare you? You know what I mean? It's almost like there's they don't understand. Or they can understand alcoholic more than they can understand someone that has a food addiction. Yeah. And that's another thing that has to change.
I've talked about this I do a lot of speaking at rehabs around the country because addiction is addiction.
Yes.
I don't care if you're addicted to porn or if you're addicted to food or cocaine, whatever it is.
Yep.
Most of the time you're running or hiding some other thing in your life, or you're trying to fill a hole in your life that's there. And really the only thing that's going to fill that hole is God,
God, yes. And finding that love for yourself.
I wish that everybody could understand, like, these bodies that we have, they're vessels for a little while.
They're just temporary.
And they're temporary. And one of these days, that's not going to matter.
Exactly.
And you're going to go on and I was watching the other day, something that's talking about in 100 years from now, nobody's going to ever know you even existed.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the only thing you got is be a good person to the people while you're here. And for me, if I can wake up every day and know that I treated people well, that I was good to people, even, and I tell my wife this all the time because she's like, she'll take up for me. Like if somebody, which I don't ever perceive somebody as hurting me. I just perceive them as they're trying to watch out for their best interests or their, whatever. But she'll be like, get mad at them. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to be nice to them.
Yes.
Because you're never going to change the world by being mean to the people that are mean to you. You can only change the world if you're nice to the people that are mean to you.
Yeah.
And it's just like when you look at faith, it's not hard to be faithful whenever everything's easy.
Correct.
You don't even have to have faith when it's easy. You only have to have faith when stuff gets hard.
Exactly.
So, I mean, same thing with the way you love people. You got to look at people and say, hey, that person did a bad thing to me.
Yeah.
And I can either have the gnashing of teeth and everything, and the Bible says not to do that, and I can return the hate and the bad to them, or I can be like, hey, you know what, I'm going to pray for you, and I love you, and if you ever need me, give me a call. Awesome. So that's the way I try to live my life. Not that I don't get mad in traffic, because I do.
For sure. I totally get that. And I apprate you so much for coming on, Vinny.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes, and this was so special, and I appreciate you so much. So until next time.